Hello there, Dave Hurley here. Um, I'm gonna do a full fly time video. We're gonna tie a McGriddle this morning. Um, my previous post was kind of a breakdown, and this is gonna be a start to finish video. Um, and I was thinking about a color pattern to tie up. And I was waiting for some material. I got some of the brushes in the mail and was scrolling and I saw this lure as a perch lure meant to kind of be realistic and it kind of inspired me. So we're going to go with a perch, kind of natural, but a little bit impressionistic. And some greens. Not going to go full fire tiger, but I'm definitely going to have some nice hot oranges in there. The core brush I'm going to use is this new brush called Mimic Faux Feather Brush. It's by RD. It doesn't have any flash in it, but it's kind of cool. I just dig it. And this is the 1-inch version. And this is where this really shines when you have this fly and this formula using the Schlappen. And so this is the color Schlappen I'm going to use. And it's kind of nice to, I was going over the different colors. I have one that kind of is a little darker. I have some whites, some browns. But to have a core with this orange and then these olive Schlappen feathers kind of blending with each other, you create kind of a depth there. And that's where I really feel like this formula shines, when you can have colors that complement or create more of a depth. We're gonna use some highlights with some orange. This is Titan Dub or Hover Dub by Nightmare Musky Flies. I'm going to mix it a little bit with the Magnum dubbing. And I also have this Titan Dub Greek Fire we're going to use towards the head. There's going to be a certain point where I'm going to tie in this flashy EP brush. These are just kind of like a silver flash. The lure had a nice flashy kind of side profile. Towards it has like a rubber, realistic rubber perch pattern. I have some olive Marabou. Towards the head, we're going to go a little darker with some grizzly Schlappen olive, Schlappen. One thing I don't like to do, I try to avoid it whenever possible, is to use a marker on the flies. So we're going to use some black Magnum dubbing, and we're going to use those as kind of impressionistic stripes on the top. The way you'll see each section, you can throw in some of that black, and it'll create the impression of a stripe. It won't look like the vertical stripes of a perch, but it'll be a black stripe in there that I don't think the fish will care, and we just have that. And also towards the head, this grizzly Schlappen should give that impression as well. So we'll see as we go forward. I might back out of the black, but that's the idea right now. I was thinking also of mixing it with some sunset just to make it not so stark. So eyes, got a few different eyes here. The perch usually, at least the bait had yellow eyes. This is kind of a yellowish eye version. We could go with the zombies. We could go with something a little different. I like these guys. They're big. So we'll take a look at that at the end. Same structure. We'll go with the universal curve size 2. In the beginning, we're gonna middle shank it with a 20 millimeter, and a 10mm connected to a B10S size 1. We're gonna put a rattle in it, all the stuff, a magic head. So let's get started here. Pretty excited about this fly, actually. It's gonna be fun. Nothing gets me more excited than when the bass are on a perch bite. The perch come in, fishery I fish in Lake St. Clair. They get fired up when the perch are around. They get real fired up. We'll start out with a size 2 universal curved hook. I like to use a thinner thread. This isn't like a dry fly thread, but it's just strong enough to tie a bass bug. Nothing too crazy. And so, again, with this lure that I saw, that I'm kind of basing this fly off of, it had a paddle tail that kind of swam, you know, it's like a rubber lure. Had a Game Changer swim to it. And there was a little bit of orange off of the tail end of it. And I'm going to try to recreate that. So we're going to go with an orange, fluorescent orange Marabou. Then we're going to follow that by the green. So start with the orange. I don't want to get too thick of a tail. But I want that orange just to be in the very tip. We're going to palmer. Palmering is my favorite way, with all feathers. There's just something about Marabou when it's palmered, it's just so even and just, I just dig that look. I see a lot of fly tires, they like to cut it and just kind of clump it up and put it on, and that absolutely works. But I can tell the difference, and I like a neatly palmered feather. And Marabou is not really, doesn't lend itself to that very well. But if you're patient with it, the end product, I think, looks better. That's it, you know. I do this, you know, even though I am a guide at this point in my life, you'd think I'd want to take the shortcuts and tie easy flies or make things as easy as possible and cut out time, and it's just not the case. I really enjoy taking my time. I really enjoy having an end product that I'm proud of or happy with. It's just worth it to me. A lot of these materials have been around for a while in my box, and I'm already discovering that about say 95% of these feathers are pretty unusable. That one's somewhat usable. Just picked over. We'll make it work. way or another, we will make it work. All right. So it's finding the top. Actually, this one kind of broke a little bit, but still enough to work with here. Hackle clips are a good tool to have. You're dealing with feathers that you have to make work that might not be as long as you'd prefer, or kind of the rejects. These are bodkin, we'll pick that out. The Marabou likes to trap. It's just kind of, it's almost like static. These feather fibers just kind of flutter and float. They catch really easily under the wraps. So that's good, I like that. I like to take inspiration from conventional gear. So you can see the orange core there, and you can see how we're going to cover that up. The second Marabou I put on here is pretty long. But what this gives us, and it's a worthwhile effort, is as this gets wet, this green is not UV, the core of it is. It just gives us a little bit of a color depth, which is great. And we'll have that as we go through with this faux feather core. It'll give us that same depth. So we'll tie in this brush here, and start with our olive Schlappen. A lot of this Schlappen I bought a long time ago, back when it was pretty cheap. It's not cheap anymore. I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be a pretty cool fly. I could be wrong. Never done it before, exactly this way, but I feel like I hit a new stride with these brushes, and it's a little variation on a fly that I've been tying for a very long time. This is one of my favorite and oldest bass flies. The McGriddle. So now we take our bodkin and we're going to chart our path. So just using the palm of your hand, you're keeping light pressure on the brush, and you're just kind of like almost like taking a machete through the woods, through the jungle, except you're not cutting these fibers, you're just moving them out of the way, making sure they're not trapped, and making sure that the brush doesn't push them into one area. So you're kind of distributing the feather fibers as you go. And you're not doing tight wraps. You're kind of leaving space so that it gives the impression of a blend. And here's where I've passed the Schlappen. And then I'm going to build a little bit of a head. We're going to do one pass. Actually, no, we'll keep that minimal, just one pass. I was going to do another one, but I'm going to focus on, because we have color accents with this fly, and those color accents are going to play a big role. I'm going to leave more room for some dubbing than I normally would. All right. So there we have it. Now it's now it's going to really take shape here. So we got some orange themes, but we're really going to, on each section for the bottom, we're going to go heavy with the Nightmare Musky flies. I'm going to mix, so I just took out a little bit of the Magnum, a little bit of the Nightmare, and I'm going to rip stack it. And this is going to go on the bottom. I don't think I'm going to use the black for this section. So this is almost too much. So I'm going to thin it out a little bit. That should be good. Still too much. All right. And so what I did was I wrapped in front of it, but not over the dubbing. And we're gonna really seal the deal with some Zap-A-Gap. So that's a lot of dubbing. I would say that's too much, but we're gonna stick with it just for the sake of this fly. And I'll probably hit it with the wire brush and thin it out just a little bit. This sunset is just, it's my favorite color from Nightmare Musky Flies. They really did an amazing job with it. And you can see how it's actually darker than the Schlappen, and that in itself is good, because, like I said, we could go black, but even just a darker color will give the impression of a perch stripe, because they're not Sharpie black on the fish. They're just darker. They give the impression of black, but just a darker green could do just as well. All right, so that's the formula there. You got the Marabou, the brush mixed with the Schlappen, and then you got dub as the color accents and material accents. We'll give it a hit it with some Zap-A-Gap and brush it out. Now, where the brush lacks flash, the dubbing has really good flash. So it gives you an element of controlling how much flash you put in the fly, and we're gonna really ramp it up here with the with that EP brush towards the head. So as I glued that with the Zap-A-Gap, I'm not going to put resin on this, but I'm pushing on it, and I'm using the synthetic fibers to really sandwich down the feathers, and it just creates like a guide for the feathers. They're going to do their thing regardless. Once this fly is wet, they're going to undulate and do all the things that Marabou and Schlappen can do. And even dubbing. Dubbing's not a stiff fiber, but it is a synthetic, and you can use it with glue and resin to kind of guide the other feathers. And there you go. So that looks nice and aerodynamic, kind of creates a overall, makes it all make sense in the end. There's less of a wild element to it. But I'm happy. That's really cool to me. This is looking very perchy already. Really excited for spring for bass. This is my favorite time of year. There's nothing like a smallmouth streamer bite on the lake where you're just ripping flies and they're on a feeding frenzy. I should, I mean, I fish a lot of different flies out there. My favorite is the Angry Bird, and I use that fly a ton, and I'll tie up some perch versions of that too. But this fly, I've caught my biggest fish, my biggest bass out there, 6.1, and that was on a McGriddle. It was a yellow McGriddle. And so I definitely use these flies out there, but I use them typically early season. Water's still a little bit colder. Fish are kind of staging into their spawning lives, and you get a just more of a hunt sort of bite, where they're not quite blitzing. There's not a ton of bait in the water, but they you fish a swim fly like this, and that's the kind of, for me, that's when the biggest opportunity is to catch the absolute just giants. They're the pressure isn't quite there, and they're more prone to making mistakes. Bigger, wiser fish are, and a fly like this is the perfect fly to fool the wisest of the wise. And it's just got all the triggers in it. So I got my brush tied in. I'm going to follow that with Schlappen. And if you want a thicker fly, I like this one Schlappen with this brush. But if you want to thicken it up, you can tie in 2 Schlappen feathers, and that'll just be more mass to your fly, more dense. Depends on the brush you use. So if you're using a different brush that just doesn't give off as much bulk, try using 2 Schlappen feathers. Pick it out a little bit. It's early. My voice hasn't woken up yet. My favorite time to tie flies is first thing in the morning. So at a certain point, as you're wrapping the Schlappen, even the Marabou, you get to a point where the stem starts to get thicker. You start to get feathers like this that are kind of more fluffy. I put a little bit of those in there, but those aren't the good feathers. That's not the good part of the feather. Sometimes I like to use them, but for the most part, once I get to that part of the single feather, that's when I try to finish it up and cut it. Same with the Marabou. Once that stem gets pretty thick, that's when I cut it. It's important for the brush to be not as long as the feathers. The brush is going to provide internal stability, and the feathers are going to do their thing. If the brush was longer or as long, it would impede the idea of these feathers kind of making micro movements. And that's kind of the whole appeal of this fly, is that I did not want to tie a game changer where the multi-spine backbone was the thing giving the fly movement, and you could have stiff fibers that you would trim. I wanted the feathers to do the movement and have a fly that was articulated that could do all the other stuff too, but just the hook, shank, hook articulation. And that was sort of, that was the direction I wanted to go with a swim fly. And it's worked. So far, so good. I really enjoy this fly, and I enjoy the process of it, and I enjoy being able to use the formula like we're using today, I think at its best, to create a 3-dimensional depth to the end product. And as this gets wet, as it just does its thing in the water, it will completely transform. All right. Still not sure about the top. Still not sure about the black. We'll give it a shot this time around and see what it, so just grabbed a little bit, both the Magnum and the Titan. The Magnum is a little more kinky. The Titan has great flash in it. The Magnum has a little bit of a deeper orange that I like, whereas the orange color of the Titan's a little bit more on the peach side, which is, it's also a great, I love the orange, but I just like the blend of the two of them a little bit more. And so I've been doing that for quite some time, blending these two oranges, getting the best of both worlds. Again, thread dam instead of wrapping over it. Now, whether you tie 60-40 or 50-50, it just depends on how much you grabbed. And it's a decision you have to make in the moment. I think that's more of a 50-50. And you can see it's kind of not seating well. It's a little wild, but we're going to control that with some glue. And once I get the top part on, I'm going to create more of a thread dam to that. So here's one way around the problem with the black. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to have the black in there, and then I'm going to go over the top of it with some more of the olive sunset. The black is going to be like an internal stripe. So rip stacking, yeah, I like that concept. That's more of a 60-40. Yeah, and then I'll mash that down, spread it a little bit laterally so kind of folds over a little bit. If you can really see it on the inside of the fly, that's kind of a, that's also the Magnum dubbing, which is, again, a thicker, more opaque fiber, whereas the Titan is thin and more translucent. And we'll just throw that over the top, and you have kind of an internal stripe. Huh. I don't know if I like it or not, but it's not going to ruin the fly, I know that. It's kind of wild. Again, it's not vertical, it's kind of this, about this angle. But I'm gonna actually put some focus on it here. There we go. Interesting. I just don't know if I like it, but I'm just going to go with it here. I'm going to go with it, and at the end of the day, I don't think my opinion matters as much. think the fish will be a-okay with it. Just using that, pushing in that Zappa gap just to start that kind of aerodynamic taper. So those fibers are trained to push back. There we go. You can kind of see that black in there, and again, when it gets wet, that'll come through. Still looking good. B10S. Coffee's getting cold. All right. So you got a 10mm spawn shank we're going to use as a connector. Takes a little needle nose pliers to open these up. All right, that's good. It's 10 millimeters on there. We're going to connect that. It's going to be in right at the beginning of the bend, almost a little lower than you would think. That's kind of right about where I like it. You might have to zoom in on that, but the eye of this shank is an anchor point. And we're going to close the back eye of the shank just to restrict too much movement. We don't want this fly fouling. We want it to move plenty, but not wrap on itself or foul. There's always a risk with a double hook fly. Little Zappa gap on the threads, just because this is our this is a potential fail point. I've never had one fail, but I've had wire fail. I've never had a shank connector fail on me. And then we're going to tie in our rattle. Catch fish rattles on Amazon. I will put a link. By far the best plastic rattles out there. Very small. It's the smallest one in the pack. There's a little clip on, or a little section of it that I cut off that's meant to attach to like a rubber connector. There's a metal bead on the end. That metal bead's going to go towards the back of the fly. We're just going to make some wraps on it. Nice loose wraps. I kind of do ones around, and then I go back around the bottom. Don't go overboard with it. It's a plastic rattle. It's really durable. And then we're just going to glue the flank of the thread or the rib cage. Just glue each side. And while that's drying, or we'll go back over it a little bit. And while that's drying, we're going to just kind of eyeball it from the top, make sure that it's centered. Give that a second. Same deal now. We're going to go faux feather brush and Schlappen. And I might, for this section, just popped into my head. It's all just instinct. But I think it might be cool to do two yeah, we can do 2 feathers. We can blend this grizzly with the olive. That would be cool. Get some more impressionism, some more maybe an impression of stripes. Find a good feather for this. All right, so this is Heritage Angling Products. Really quality Schlappen. I like it. I'm impressed. This is Cascade Crest. Also pretty good. The Heritage, I think, is a little bit better. Got our faux feather brush tied in. Got the 2 feathers here. Just gonna line them up. I'm gonna put the grizzly on the outside. I'm not sure if that's gonna make a difference. It made sense to me in the moment. Wrap forward. And around we go. You can hear those birds outside. That's spring talking. It's coming early. Spring is here. Oh, that's great. I'm really happy with that. All right, so we wrapped forward over the rattle, in front of the rattle, clip, and then we'll push those fibers back right to where the rattle starts. You don't want to build too much of a thread base in front of the rattle because of the this area, this real estate up here is really, really important. Man, so, okay. That grizzly really gives off an impressionism of black. I think to the point where we probably don't need stripes. I don't know how much of a trigger strikes are for fish. I really don't. I want to believe that they like them, but I just don't know. There's lots of ways you can create that impressionism. We could use a black Marabou on the other side of the magic head, which we're going to throw in there. There's so many ways to create impressions of stripes. There's nothing like when you use a Sharpie, you can really color that stuff in and it looks great. But a couple things that happen is that it fades. You're coloring natural feathers, which they're going to do their thing. They're not going to stay in place. Like if you're coloring synthetics, a little different. So it doesn't make sense to color natural feathers with markers, at least to me anyways. So we'll see. We'll just take it step by step and figure it out. So you got this wire that's going over the Schlappen, and that's stability. It's protecting those feathers from, obviously, if you just had the Schlappen on there and you caught a pike, that might be the end of the fly. Once that stem is cut, first thing that feather is going to do is unravel, and you got a problem. There's no going back from that. So this wire brush is now providing a ton of stability. So this fly can survive those toothy critters and even bass. Their sandpapery teeth grinding on these can do some damage, and the Marabou especially, after you catch a lot of fish on these flies, the Marabou starts to break apart. So yeah, that brush goes a long way to kind of keeping this fly in the game. A lot of different colors. At this point, I'm just trying to think about the black and whether that's important or not. We also have this flash brush that we have to incorporate, which I have somewhat of an idea. I think I'm going to, just for the sake of doing it, we're going to put a little bit more black on top. At this stage, so we're post rattle, pre magic head. I typically don't use dubbing at this stage for other patterns, but this is a little bit different. This is a perch fly, and I really enjoy tying perch, and I want it to have all the bells and whistles. We're going to go for a little bit more realism, although our realism in fly tying is always impressionistic. It's the very nature of tying with materials, but I like that black now. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to put anything over it. I'm just going to leave that black, and then I'm going to hit it with some Titan. This is a hover dub. I chose the hover dub over the yeah, so it's a Titan hover dub. Nightmare Musky Flies hover dub. I chose the hover dub over the Titan, and now I'm going to go right back on what I'm saying here. So actually, I wanted to incorporate some of this Titan Greek fire, and I'm going to do that here. it's a little more flashy. The hover dub is a better orange in my mind than the Titan orange, fluorescent orange. Because now we're in the zone of kind of impinging on the hook down here, I want to make this a little shorter. So I like to set it on my thigh as I'm thinning it out. Just have a little stockpile on my thigh that I can reach down and grab for the next section. So that Greek fire gives us a little deeper orange, borderlining on some red. For this wrap, I actually wrapped both both sections. I wrapped over the dub. Again, you might have to zoom in, but I did that because I'm going to put the magic head over, and I think it won't really affect it. It might, actually, it could be a mistake. Could give us less real estate up here. This will be tough. We'll just go forward. But right now at this stage, just looking at this perch, I'm happy. So this is an R13 Petitjean magic head. It's just this cone that is designed to really create a unpredictable movement in your fly. What that allows you to do, and you don't have to use it as an articulated fly. If you don't put a magic head in there, if you don't have them, they're hard to find. You can buy them on eBay. Usually they ship from Europe. They take forever to get to you. But if you don't put it in there, this fly will still fish. The reason why I do it, the reason why I like it, it's a twofold reason. You can see how it automatically pushes those fibers back. You can see how it doesn't impede the hook. But most importantly, when you're fishing this fly, again, I talk about early season fishing slower. I'll fish this fly on an intermediate line. And the idea behind it, it's neutrally buoyant. You can pull hard and fish it fast, and it'll move, and then the moment you stop, it just does crazy stuff. It'll turn all the way around and look backwards. It's not so big of a head that it impedes the glide of the fly, but when you're fishing it slow, you can just, the way it puppeteers with the smallest amount of movement, smallest strip, really just, it's animated. It really, it creates this animation that, I don't know, it just, as an angler watching it, it's uncanny. There's nothing like it out there. These magic heads are just an incredible invention, and I don't know if they're still making them, to be honest. I don't know if they're discontinued or if people didn't really get behind the idea, but someone needs to recreate that. So this is an EP flash brush, and we're just gonna wrap that right now. Usually at this stage, we would use just the Marabou. And it's like 2.5 wraps, just enough to get a good amount of those fibers in there. And you don't have to use a brush if you want to. You have flash, or there's a ton of ways you can tie in flash. Obviously, I don't have to explain that, but just happen to have this brush lying around. I wanted kind of a silvery flash, and that's all inspiration from the commercial I saw for this rubber bait. So this Marabou feather is a little bit of a kind of a thicker, lighter feather, and that's going to go over. And so the flash is going to be underneath the Marabou. And Marabou, once it gets wet, it turns into just, it almost like has like a melting quality to it, just like melts away. So that flash is really going to come through. And at this point, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here, we could do an orange Marabou feather would be cool, and just kind of go, leave the realism behind, kind of go a little bit more impressionistic and visible, fluorescent orange. But we're going to stay in that borderline realistic realm for this one. But I think an orange Marabou feather would be cool. Again, just bodkin, picking that Marabou. Last wrap here. I like to wrap back before I cut. Toss that in the garbage. And we are crowded. This B10S is crowded. So I'm going to wrap back a little tight. And this is where having a thinner thread will come in handy. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to finish this fly. So because this Marabou is thick, I'm just going to use the darker olive Schlappen before I tie that in. You could use a different brush at this stage, but I'm going to stick with the same one. Now this brush is a little thick for all the problems that I'm foreseeing here at this stage, not having enough room to finish this fly with dubbing, but we'll make it work. This is something that I'm pretty comfortable with, just because I've been tying this fly for so long. But if you're not used to having a crowded hook eye, I get how it's crazy frustrating. So that's about good there. We are crowded, but it'll be okay. There's nothing you can't fix with a little super glue. Super glue, resin. And this is almost like a moot point here. We're just so limited, and I think this brush is a little dense, but we're sticking with the formula. At this point, a lot of this is going to be covered with glue and eyes, so the density here is providing a mass for that the super glue to stick to. All right, final stage. We got a Greek fire bottom. Should we do black up top? It's tough to say. Let's do the best of both worlds. Let's mix the black with a little bit of sunset. See how that looks. So the black Magnum mixed with the Sunset Titan. Just like mixing paint. Dig it. That looks good. Just did a couple wraps there. There's some Greek fire. Well, ripstack, so about that much. As a rule, this dubbing, and most dubbing, is has a flotation quality to it. And so having more dubbing on the top of the fly will contribute to it swimming right. It's not a, if you have a little more dubbing on the bottom, it's not going to really throw the fly off, but it's just a general rule I like to go by. 60-40. All right, so this is kind of where the challenge is going to be here. We're going to lose, yep, immediately. I'm going to keep pressure on that bodkin. You want to stabilize with your fingers. Trap it with a loose wrap. Fold it back. Now you're sort of willing it into place here, which is the most difficult part. So, got my wraps in. Got it trapped. I'm pulling back this way with the bodkin. This is the hardest part. The whip finish. And so I got the whip finish in place. I got my fingers pulling back on the fibers. I'm whip finishing. And again, I'm pulling back. And that right there is incredibly tough to do when you have a crowded situation like this. So I got it cut, and now we're going to use the glue to sort of really solidify this mess. And I'm not worried about the eye of the hook filling up with glue. All I'm worried about right now is just getting in there and locking everything down. Everything else is going to be fixed with a little bit of poking around with the bodkin. We get our hook eye free, push those materials back. So that's enough of a gap there, it's perfect. So there it is. Just like that, we're in the clear. Now my thought is I made that look easier than it actually is, and pretty sure anybody who's trying this fly, one thing you can do is use a longer, bigger hook. So one size up would give you more real estate, and you can use the same magic head, the same rattle, and you'd have a way easier time with this last step. It's really up to you. But again, just know that it's not easy. It can get very frustrating. So I think with all the eye options, I'm just going to stick with this this guy here. It's a pupil eye. I think it's a 10 millimeter. It's got a nice red around it. It's got a nice flash. As far as realism goes, I like the red, just kind of tying in with the Greek fire. So I think that'll be cool. Locklite super glue gel has been the best so far for me for gluing on eyes, but I'm very open to any suggestions. If you have a better glue that's not a 5-minute epoxy, definitely comment and let me know. Just using the shaft of the bodkin to push down on the eye. It looks good. I like that. Yeah, that so that's a bigger eye, but the cool thing about the red ring around the eye is it makes it look a little smaller too. Kind of blends in. And I like to glue my eyes in towards the front, right behind the hook eye, which is not anatomical. It's not anatomically correct. But what it does is it helps the development of the head of this fly, provides a guide for the taper. As we're going to throw some flex resin in here, and we're going to use that synthetic top, synthetic bottom to push down on these these wild Marabou and Schlappen feathers and kind of guide them into a profile shape. And obviously we're not going to throw resin on the Marabou, but it'll just help create a side profile that's more fish-like. It's all these little subtleties that come together that make this fly special. Yeah, I'm glad we did the black. I think we have enough black in there to give the impression of some stripes. And once this thing's wet, as you'll see, I'll go upstairs and we'll take some footage outside, and I'll take some footage of it dry outside, and then I'll go wet it down and show you guys what that looks like, because it's completely different than what you're seeing now. And if you're watching this and you haven't watched the breakdown video, definitely go see that. I talk a little bit more about what makes this fly. Couple dabs of Solarez Flex. I'm just going to use my finger, and I'm not going to push it back so far on the dub. I want to leave a good amount of this dubbing resin free, but I just want the beginning of it, or what I want to do is thin it out as it goes down, and kind of have it just guide the shape. That looks great. All right, I dig that. You can kind of see the Greek fire, a little bit of the flash from the sunset that's mixed into the black. That Greek fire, it's almost like lightning. It's such a cool deal. And then this, you can see the bottom here. That's the Magnum dubbing is a little bit more just through and through UV. The cool thing about the nightmare musky flies is they have this flash that also is really highly UV reflective, and so it just has a really cool quality underneath the light. It's like you get this little surprise of lightning flash. There we have it, finished product here. This is a perch McGriddle. And again, the idea here is a fly that the materials do a lot of the movement. It's articulated. It's got a lot of, obviously it's got the rattle, it's got the magic head, so it's gonna move. It's gonna do all kinds of stuff. But when you fish it slow, you kill it and it's hovering. The Marabou, the Schlappen, undulate in the water and just create almost like a live bait. Just the subtlest, most subtle movement. And this is the type of fly that you can fish to really wise fish early season. Throw it in a river and it's gonna look really cool. And yeah, we experimented today, and I dig it. I think this is a real good one. I like the flash underneath the Marabou there. I think that's going to come out once it's wet. It's going to look really cool. So let's go get this under some natural light and show you guys. So you can see here This is when the fly really shines, when it's wet. It just sort of melts away. The feathers kind of melt into everything, and the true, you can kind of see the potential there. It just looks like a real fish. Becomes something completely different. But that's the McGriddle. Extremely happy with how this fly turned out. And just for reference, here's a couple other versions of the McGriddle that I did. The bottom yellow one has a translucent brush core, and this one has a EP fiber brush core in white that's a little more dense. Just to give you a little reference point of different types of colors and ways you can tie this fly.